So welcome everyone to the safe space where we learn how to train and feed our dogs better. And today is a very special Ask a Vet with nationally recognized veterinarian, Dr. Zach. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and this series, again, for those of you watching, please make sure that you subscribe, you follow, you share, probably most importantly, because this series, Dr. Zach and I are doing to make vet care and vet support more accessible. But of course, as always, disclaimer, this is not intended to treat, diagnose, prescribe, cure, recommend, diagnose. Basically, what we're doing is we're taking questions from you, from the viewers, and then Dr. Zach and myself a little bit will be giving his thoughts that you can then share with your veterinarian. So this is kind of a nice supplemental way for you to get extra kind of more, a little bit more of a personalized support. But don't forget that we now offer online telehealth vet appointments. So if you want like a one-on-one with Dr. Zach and team, specifically for your pet, then that'll all be linked down below. So definitely check that out. So let's just jump into the first question. I'm really excited to see all of them come through today. If you have a question and you're watching live or on replay, you can comment that below as well. We try to get to those as many as we can. All right, so for this first question, this pet parent asks or says that their dog is 12 years old and starting to have incontinence. Their vet recommended Incurin, and they're nervous to give her any medications. Are there any safer alternatives other than meds that can help her? And is Incurin okay to give a senior dog long term? I feel like it may help her incontinence, but do more damage to her aging body. So, Dr. Zach, if this were to be your dog, how would you
Mhm.
handle this?
Yeah. So at the age of 12, so once we get towards like our senior ages, then, and it's been, I would say years and years after, like a spay event, because that's the classic time we see where, especially female dogs can start to have some incontinence. The more likely cause for it when it gets to that age is usually a degenerative condition involving the nerves that are in that area of the body. So, and a lot of times it's related to kind of the lower spinal cord. So some things we'll see in addition to that, not saying that we're seeing this all in this situation, but we'll sometimes see that they're also a little bit slower to get upstairs or get up on things like a couch at this time. Sometimes they may even scuff their feet. Like we'll, in the vet office, if we hear this in an older dog, we'll kind of look at their toenails in the back to see if they're kind of like scuffed or they're shorter than the front ones. And the reason that is because most times when we hear this, the first thing we look at after we've ruled out like a urinary tract infection or something of that nature, which is pretty easy to rule out, is something that would be affecting kind of the nerves that involve or control the urethral sphincter. So in this situation, actually, Incurrent is something we see used a lot with the spay incontinence, but in this situation, a lot of times, although that may be able to help, I'm not positive. There are, reported side effects of that medication. Not that it's the most dangerous drug, but there are some side effects that have been reported. A lot of times, this is something where body work is going to be a little bit more helpful, especially in the back end. So, first off, would be something would be in the line of acupuncture or acupressure, and obviously that's something that we would need to get a specialist or someone that's trained in that to do, because most regular vet hospitals, most, not all, but most don't have that available. But this is something where, again, body work is probably where I would start, because I would be thinking it's a degenerative nerve condition. So so that would be something. Acupuncture would be something, and then physical therapy to help strengthen the muscles in that area of the body. um, and then I guess there are some things that could help, but it's not really something that I could see if it is a neuromuscular condition that would be helping. So the Incrin is kind of like it helps to almost like address that sphincter a little bit, but it's not going to be something that I could see being like a major help when it's a neurodegenerative thing. But
Mm.
it's really hard it's really hard to, like, I guess, be confident that that's what's going on, but that's the more likely thing we see in this situation. It's not really a medication thing. It's more about trying to um, either prove or disprove that there's other signs maybe that are pointing towards this being a lower spinal cord compression thing, which a lot of older dogs do get. Same with
Mm.
humans. And then the body work is more the thing that I would be focusing on. So physical therapy, acupuncture, massage therapy, and trying to get that area of the body strengthened. And if it keeps getting worse and your regular vet is confident that it's not a urinary tract infection, then it may be worth seeing like a neurologist for a consult to see if they agree or disagree with this theory, because there are other things that can cause this, but that would be more where I'd be leading to in this situation.
Interesting. And then for management, I'm thinking kind of what I would do in this situation now that I have a female dog. I guess diaper, they have those washable, reusable
Mm.
diapers might be
Yep.
helpful, to keep it from making a mess inside. I know that when Marlo was in heat several months ago, I know it's not the same, but that was an experience. But using the diapers helped a little bit. Just in the
Yeah.
meantime, like that might be nice.
Like
Interesting.
night or
And
something like that. Like even like
yeah,
we
yeah.
that's usually a lot of times when we hear it happens most is like they're sleeping and they wake up and they're kind of in a little puddle of urine. So yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a question that came through. I don't know if I screenshotted it for this, but that their dog would wake up and would have urinated in their sleep. So apparently, I guess that's more common. I didn't realize that.
It happens.
Um, yeah, unfortunately. And you mentioned this before, but it sounds like delaying spaying, maybe. I don't think there's a strong correlation per se based on studies, but that it can potentially help avoid that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I
Potentially?
well, that's a different topic. Yeah. So, but I'd say that a lot of times, if dogs develop incontinence within like a year to 2 years of getting spayed, then it's more likely like there's a phrase or a term that's
Mm,
idiopathic. Still, we don't really know why. I have my theories behind it, but I don't think we've ever come to a consensus. But that there's a spay incontinence condition that they'll get, where Incurin is kind of like the medication that they'll prescribe
got it.
most of the time. That so. But in this situation, I would say it seems less likely to be like a spay incontinence, and
Yeah.
that it would be potentially from that. But and then there are some like herbs that can help sometimes with lower urinary tract. Like the classic one is like nettle leaf is one that we use, but that's more with like kidney disease or like lower urinary tract disease. Is like it's kind of like a mild diuretic and a kidney supporter, but again, I don't think in this situation that's where I'd be starting with. If we rule out all the other stuff, then I would be like, maybe this could help. But I would say in this situation, it seems more likely I'd be leading down towards like a degenerative neurologic condition. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then before we go to the next question, we're getting quite a few questions on the live. So those of you watching on replay won't see those. Just for a heads up, what we typically do is prioritize the ones that are submitted through Google Forms first. We get through a handful of those, but I will come back to some of these live questions. Cindy, Marcia, Sid, Terry, Hector. I'll come back to. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can. But for those watching on replay, the Google form to submit your questions for future Ask a Vets will be down below in the description. So let's go to the next one, which is for a dog that's about 1.5 years old. And their question is how to get my dog comfortable with me cleaning her ears or putting drops in it. She will let me touch and massage them and massage them as long as I don't have anything else in my hand. And I really,
Mm.
this is probably more of a maybe behavioral training question, but I put it here because I'm sure you've seen this in clinic, but it's something that I don't think pet owners, myself included, probably practice enough, which is kind of this companion handling, if you will, and getting our
Mm-hmm.
dogs used to being touched, which, as you know, Dr. Zach, I just struggled with this with Marlo, taking her to a vet. She got really scared and they couldn't even
Right.
get a stethoscope on her. And so I think it's important to kind of talk a little bit about this, I guess, from your perspective as a veterinarian, of like how important it is to practice handling our dogs.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think this is like a 50-50 where you and I are going to have equal input because, I've seen some of the videos you put out, like the one with Marlo with the leash. That was a great one. Like,
Oh, thank
you
you.
showed progression over time that took weeks to months. I'm assuming
Yeah.
that it took some time for her to understand that, not all ropey things
Or scary.
near her are bad,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure that she has trauma, and we're as a society becoming more and more aware, I think, of like trauma and the consequences of trauma,
Mhm.
and that doesn't just stay within the realm of humans. Like dogs, especially, anyone that's rescued a dog, as I would assume, has seen a dog that has considered, or at least when they were looking for the dog that they were gonna adopt. So and I personally, I spend like 3 or 4 days every quarter at an animal services place where we just do rapid fire exams, spays and neuters on the dogs to get them out into families, and all of them, I'm sure have a story. So in this situation, it's no different. It's good that you've kind of targeted or isolated the stressor, and that's a good thing, because it would be something that's the first part, is really realizing what the stressor is. And you've even kind of broken it down where, like, you realize that she'll let you touch the ears when you haven't, when you don't have anything in your hand, which is good. So now you understand, what her thought process is. And I think that you and I would kind of agree that this is where positive reinforcement and conditioning would be an appropriate situation. And it would be literally a daily thing that you would be able to, I guess, understand her zone of caution, and slowly, bringing things into that space that have stressed her out, but in a way that, first there's positive reinforcement behind it, and there's a lot of positive reinforcement after it as well.
Yeah. And I think the one thing I was going to say is okay, I know this is not feasible for everyone. And this is kind of an extra kind of next level thing. And I know it's actually become more difficult to do. But one thing I love doing, and I've been doing with Marlo, is I ask my vet, I say, can I just pay an exam fee and come in for your normal appointment time? And like, you just give her treats and just have her come and just exist and be pleasant, and have the front desk give her treats. And I know that not everybody can do that. And my vet here, I have a local holistic vet. Dr. Zach lives across the country from me, but I have a local holistic vet here, and he's so open to that. And like, sure, like, come on in. I bring a couple of my dogs at a time. And that's really, really helped. She got nervous we had to go to a new vet for this. So I think that's what the stress was for her. But even if, as long as you ask your vet clinic ahead of time, sometimes what you can do is find out when their non-busy times are. And you could even take your dog into the front desk area and have the front desk staff ask them ahead of time, though, toss some treats out. Go in there and weigh your dog. One, it's good to keep an eye on their weight, but two, it helps them associate and learn that going to the vet doesn't always mean something bad. Even, let's say your vet is super busy or they don't allow this, just driving there, park in the driveway or in their parking lot, and work on giving treats and positive reinforcement and toys and things in your car at the vet, so they don't get, there's not this anticipatory anxiety. So that should help. Another thing, Dr. Zach, which somebody was asking in the chat, so we could probably answer it here because it's all relevant, is around CBD. I know we've talked about this before, but you are an expert in CBD for pets. Marcia specifically asked in the chat. I'll ask her question here because I think it's all relevant, which is Marcia H asked, what's the safest and most effective way to help my golden doodle who becomes so anxious during thunderstorms or loud noises? They've tried thunder shirts and stuff. So I think in general, can you talk just a little bit about CBD and how it can help these anxious dogs?
Yeah, so a full spectrum CBD rich extract is the only form of CBD that I believe in, and that's a lot of verbiage, but it really describes the product in a lot of ways. So I think CBD is something that caught a very high buzz and was, the next big thing for a while, and a lot of people ran with it, and now there's just such saturation with a lot of people who understood that it was a marketing claim first, and that people really didn't know anything behind it. So the challenge with CBD and finding one that works, and I know this because I actually just had some feedback with an individual who did a consult with us through Naked Pet, that and she had been to someone that had tried CBD in the past, didn't like it, and then I recommended one or two companies that I personally know, and I know that they do this third-party lab testing, that and she said it made the difference in the world. Like, the one dose was enough to show that the product was effective, and in the past she tried for weeks with this other one or two companies and they didn't work. So the validity behind a true full spectrum hemp extract is definitely there, and when you take into account how it really has no toxicity profile, again, if you're getting a product that's formulated correctly, then it is something that is actually very empowering to pet parents when they need to try something, at least initially, and it's just about finding the company that is going to be trustworthy. So, and in addition to that, I'm part of something called the Veterinary Cannabis Society,
Hmm.
which is a collective of leading veterinarians across the United States in all different states. So not just the states that are cannabis supporters, like California and Colorado. That we do a good amount of work both on the education side as well as on the active what would you say, like being active in like trying to change laws and regulations. So and the stresses and the anxiety that comes with starting CBD are all across the country. So anyone that's feeling like that you're not alone. And that's why all the people that are part of that collective, we all do cannabis consults, including me, who I do that through Naked Pet as well, with my small team. So there's a consult we do specifically for incorporating cannabis medicine into an animal's life. And we also talk through that consult as well about some other things that can enhance the effects of cannabis. And then what's a safe titration protocol if you don't see one, or the second one or the third one, the third dose you give, and how to go from there. So, but CBD is definitely good for helping in a lot of ways, from reducing anxiety to calming effects to helping with pain and inflammation. And that all stems through the endocannabinoid system, which is a system that all of us have throughout our bodies, which actually is the master system of pretty much everything else. So that was a lot.
Yeah, no, that's helpful though. We need to do a deep dive on that as well, a whole dedicated series to
Yeah, for
CBD, because you are probably the most well-informed and experienced veterinarian in that space that I know or know of. I'm sure there's, some others too, but you
sure.
definitely have done your work there.
Yeah, I have
Okay,
I
so
in that area for sure that are, there's some great ones across the country. So
awesome. And I just had to call out Alex in the chat, says, I used your advice about going to the vet, not just for visits. It worked like a charm. Kava loves going there and pulls when she sees any vet office. So that's really good. That makes me happy. So next question we will address here is, oh, okay. My pup developed rad bumps, some with pus and crustiness. What can I do to help him? He hates the vet and I like to treat from home. It's evident that there are no pests involved. How can I help heal his skin? What type of shampoos are best for dogs with skin allergies?
well, you're talking to the right person.
Yes. Yes. Dr.
I would
Zach
say,
makes the
yeah.
best skin products for dogs. It's all I use anymore for his shampoos and topical treatments, but I'll let you speak to it.
Yeah, for sure. So and again, I just want to obviously make everyone aware that the product line that we created, the Naked Pet line, it was actually an initial line for humans, and it was just modified from that. So every product was actually used for 25, 30, probably about 30 years or so or more. By my partner and our formulator, whose name is Vasiliki Carlin. So she's a paramedical esthetician, and so basically what she did was she would take the cases over from plastic surgeons and then help to heal and remediate skin, and as well as other things. She would do a lot of immune mediated diseases of the skin, like psoriasis or eczema or pityriasis or rosacea for a while. So that's kind of where the Naked Pet line actually came from. And then her and I had been friends for years, and I was frustrated and had the same question that this individual had as well, because like all the products online, I didn't really understand the ingredients that were in there, and most of it, again, just like the CBD side, was marketing, and they were all doing exactly the same thing. There was nothing really unique about it. So and when I was able to find, realize what she was doing, and the validity behind her stuff, and the fact that she had medical doctors on the human side trusting her, and she was, 100% holistic. So, our products are 100% holistic and all natural. Then, it was really exciting that there was going to be final that side. So, in this situation, if there's red bumps on the body, there's probably three main reasons that could be. Did it say how old the animal was? Did it say on there?
It did. Let's see here.
Yeah,
2 years
I think.
old. 2 years.
Yeah. So yeah, there's about three things. I was going to say, if we were really young, puppies can get a puppy kind of like dermatitis. That's really common. They get just because their immune system's really low. But if we're already
Oh,
past the puppy stage, then the main things would be a bacterial folliculitis would be an infectious cause. Second would be the reaction to substances around the house. The classic ones are the cleaning chemicals or the laundry detergents or even fresheners or things in the air that can cause that and then settle on things. And then the third would just be, some type of allergic skin disease, whether it's food or environmental or both. So obviously the skin is, just an eruption of what's maybe going on in the body, which is what the allergic side would be. But for the other two, and for the third one as well, the thing we kind of ignore a lot is understanding that we have to start a very intensive topical regimen therapy for the reason that, again, if this was a human, that's what we'd be doing. The medications or the supplements or the products they would be recommending for a human, they wouldn't all just be oral and say changing your diet. Now, of course, that's very important, especially for our pets, because most of them, I would say, still are not on a species appropriate diet. But at the same time, if we're having skin problems, then we need to address them at the source. So in this situation, if we're seeing a lot of bumps, the products, the ones that we have seen a lot of success with, the three through the Naked Pet line, which, disclaimer, we have a lot more coming. So, but that's exciting. But we are trying to get those out. But right now, the three that we see a lot of success with, which would be, and it sounds like an inflammatory-based dermatitis, would be the shampoo, the Naked Pet shampoo, which is safe to use, especially in the short term when we're trying to address something up to 3 times a week, which, we already did our Mythbuster about that. But, everyone says bathe your dog more than once a month, but it depends on the product you're using. So the Naked Pet shampoo, for sure, is 3 times a week in the short term to try and control this reaction. And the second would be the Silver Hydrosol, which is both antimicrobial as well as calming. And then the third would be the Skin Rejuvenator that we use, which is a very potent antioxidant and calming agent as well, which would help heal whatever's going on there. So that's usually where we've started, and we've had a lot of people so far kind of give us feedback that those three together are very helpful in these kind of situations.
Yeah, I even have for those of you, here we go. I love the label. First, the design is really cool, but I love just to see the ingredients are very simple. It's completely vegan, non-toxic, cruelty-free, no SLS or sodium lauryl sulfate, which is something I'm actually sensitive to personally. So I see
Oh,
it in a lot of pet products.
interesting.
Yeah, I get little like rashes and things.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool. I
so
love that.
in my general practice doctor's like, yeah, it's actually kind of common in humans. So SLS is just it's no bueno, but it's in a lot of pet products,
Mhm.
unfortunately. So
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
and I will have all that link below though for those watching. All the Naked Pet line is linked below, so you can
And
check
then
that out.
the
Oh yeah.
last thing for that would be to do a good scrape through your house as well, to
Mm,
see if there is anything that your pet kind of is exposed to on a daily basis that could be causing a contact reaction. So
interesting.
especially if the bumps are just kind of like on the ventral aspect where they lay down a lot, um, that would be something that I would look into. So we mentioned a bunch of them, and actually I think in our um, allergy guide, our comprehensive one, like the one that's it's
The
basically a better.
longer
Yeah,
integrative one, yeah. The
right, that
comprehensive
one.
one. The 40
The
page something one.
Yeah, right. I mean, we put how much time? That was weeks of work you and I put into that. So we go over all the things as well in that would be useful to kind of scan your house for and see if we do have something that we can change in that area. And then obviously we also have, like, if you're still having trouble, then we have the 50% off of the Naked Pet allergy consult that you get when you purchase that guide.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point. I don't think I mentioned enough is that for the comprehensive allergy guide, when you purchase that, it's linked below, of course. Like Dr. Zach just said, that includes a 50% off online telehealth vet appointment with him. So it's really a great opportunity. So you get this like cool resource, and then you can get this really personalized vet consult, which is nowadays like really invaluable. So that's great. Okay, so let's talk about. I think this next one had to do with rabies. So this 1-year-old dog, the owner says that the rabies vaccine is mandated annually in their county. Is there anything they can give to their dog to help with the extra vaccine dosage every year? She didn't have any side effects when we got the first dose, but they're worried about issues over time if she continues to get annual boosters. So I think
Mhm.
to sum that up, she's worried about and wanting to detoxify. But before you answer that, Dr. Zach, can you talk a little bit about just your experience and your research around kind of over vaccinating, very high level, right? But getting a lot of questions about that, and just kind of your high level thoughts on that and titering, because it'd be a good time to talk about titer tests, and then we can talk about detox.
Yeah, for sure. So,
Cool.
I think it's something you and I are very passionate about,
Hmm.
and it's just about logical, rational pet care. So, and a lot of things we do nowadays are kind of just plug and chug, and it's like that's just the way we've been doing it, and a
Hmm.
lot of it doesn't make sense, logically. So, when it comes to the vaccine side, it's incredible how little research has been done. Finally, we're starting to get a little bit of it, but the guru of that side is a veterinarian named Dr. Rob Schultz, who um, came out is still probably there. It's Madison, Wisconsin, but he's been doing research on the amount of time the core vaccines last in pets, and then at the same time the non-core, how how non-efficacious they are essentially, and that they're not really proven to create an immunity, and that they may just reduce the severity of disease, kind of like the talk behind the COVID vaccine now, where it's like maybe it reduces severity, but people are still getting COVID with it. So that's kind of the thought on the non-core vaccines now, is that they don't really provide too much immunity. Now, when the core vaccines are efficacious at creating long-term immunity, that's the goal of a vaccine, right? I mean, for example, in humans, like we get a polio vaccine when we're a kid, and you don't have to get another one for in a lot of situations for your whole life. And
Hmm.
tetanus vaccine, 10 years plus. So that's what a vaccine's supposed to do, lasting immunity for either years to decades, to even sometimes your entire life. So when it comes to the core vaccines, we have now started to get some evidence that the longevity of protection, and that's just antibody protection. We can't measure the other half of the immune system, but for the antibody side, it's somewhere between 5 to 7 years, even more, for the average pet. And so, repeating vaccines every 1 to 3 years, depending on which one we're talking about, is probably not necessary, and is actually potentially overstimulating the immune system, causing a lot of the immune-mediated diseases that we're seeing. And of course, that isn't validated through research yet. And I think that it would be very hard to, because we're not going to be able to, on the holistic side, number one, get a study that says this animal got a vaccine every year and now it has an immune-mediated disease. That's just something, I don't think that would pass like the humane aspect of it, because that would be
Yeah.
pretty crazy. But I think that a lot of vets more and more are coming to understand and seeing that we're seeing this huge exponential increase in immune-mediated blood diseases, immune-mediated endocrine diseases, cancers, as well as a couple other things. And some of the practices we're doing are not logical. And so that's where we start. So the diet obviously is number one. The vaccines is number two for me. Those are the two that I think that we can make huge changes and avoid a lot of that stuff. So the vaccine titers, which we do in humans, I get a rabies titer every 3 to 5 years because I'm an actively licensed vet. Just it measures the amount of antibody protection in your bloodstream to the vaccines you've already had. And so it's surprising that this is so hard to find access to still. And if you do have access, a lot of times, because now we do it through Naked Pet, I know that the numbers are inflated crazily. So, through Naked Pet, we decided to offer this as one of our telehealth consults, and we've had several dozen people already within like the 1.5 months of offering it that have really appreciated that service. And the only thing that you have to do outside of that telehealth consult is obviously get the sample to submit, and you get that from your vet or another veterinary office if they're not willing to provide it. But we haven't had that problem yet. And what we do is we basically have the relationship with the number one lab in the country that does this, and then the relationship is between the pet parent and us in terms of submitting that test and then proving if there's immunity, and then providing those results with their vet to help them see that, and then as well as any non-vet related, uh, you know, I guess establishments, so boarding, grooming, etc.
Yeah. No, I think that's really helpful. And uh, you kind of touched on this, but for those that follow on my any other social platform, TikTok, Instagram, I was doing a video and talking about the latest study and research that came out on core vaccines that showed that they can continue to provide protective immunity
Mm-hmm.
for up to 5 years, even longer. And really, what that showed is just like Dr. Zach said, that many of us are taking our pets to the vet every year, every other year to get these vaccine boosters. And while I'm not anti-vaccine by any way, I am by any means, I am anti over vaccinating. If my dog already has protective immunity against, let's say, distemper or parvo, then for me and my pets, I don't want to just continue to give vaccines to them, because we know that that's not going to make them like more protected. It's not like you can get protected and then more protected. It's kind of like you are or you aren't. Is that a good way to explain it, Dr. Zach?
Yeah, I would say so. And don't get me wrong. Again, the titers are not a way to get around vaccines, and that's
No.
something that a lot of people kind of
Yeah. That.
assume, especially like conventional vets. No, it's just to
Yeah.
prove that we do need a vaccine today, or this month coming up. And
Mhm.
we've had several pet parents through the titer testing that their pets' values were low, and they were like, "Oh, great, this is awesome." So I actually do need that vaccine. So it's
Yep.
not a way to get around vaccines. It's a way to prove that we do need another one, and that it makes sense because the body is low in this protection.
Yes, and so it's what it's doing is it's allowing us as pet owners and the veterinarians we work with to make an educated decision. And I think that's all we're trying to do with talking about titers again, which is something that's linked down below for you guys. You guys have exclusive access, exclusive pricing, and everything on that with Dr. Zach and the Naked Pet team, which is pretty incredible. And I just have to say, through all of my research and years looking into this, Dr. Zach, it's the most affordable, accessible, easiest tighter option that I've ever seen ever. And it comes with two vet consults. So it's like such a great value. So thank you for offering that to the community. But yeah, I think a lot of people. I'll post about titer tests, and people say, "Oh, well, you need to vaccinate your pet." And I'm like, oh, I agree with core vaccines. I agree. But if they already have protective immunity, why just give more? It's unnecessary and
Mhm.
potentially harmful. Okay, so let's talk about, and I'm excited to talk about this because you just launched something new, which is really
Mhm.
cool. But the other part of this question was, okay, I have to give my dog this vaccine based on my county regulations. There's obviously some benefits, right? Protection against rabies in this example, but there's also, as we widely know and agree, and as it's widely agreed upon in the vet community, that there can be some potentially harmful effects of giving a vaccine. What can we
Mhm.
do in terms of detox? Now, I want to preface and say I know this could be a whole hour long session. So give us a little high level what you would do for detox, and then we'll talk about a new service that you're offering.
Yeah, sure. So the detox side of it, we kind of look at the organs that are going to have to process um, this injection. So mostly it would be like a liver, kidney, and gut situation. So the protocol that, or the detox aspect of it, that it should start a few days before you get the vaccine to help your body kind of ramp up and to increase the what I would call the reduction potential, because when you excite the body, it promotes oxidation. So that's really where it stems around. And then for about 2 weeks afterwards is when I would say kind of this detox aspect of it. And it's just literally to help to support the body through the action of vaccinating, and then to process kind of the adjuvants and the other molecules that are in there, that have been shown to obviously cause a little bit of stress in the body as well, because that's the goal of a vaccine, is to stress the body in a controlled fashion to train it to be used to this infectious agent. But then at the same time, there are other things in there that they claim are necessary for the vaccine, and then those do stress the body as well.
Perfect. And I just had to show, let's see if it'll load. Here we go. Dr.
I
Zach
love
loves
that
this
picture.
picture. So this is what it looks like when you click through the link at nakedpet.com or down below. This is what the detox.
Just so melancholy. It's great.
Yeah. Um,
Oh
but
man, it's so
you could, you sent that picture over and I was like, that is hilarious.
it is. He's got his little beanie on, and he's not looking forward to going to school. That's what he said. He
I
just doesn't
know,
want
but
to do
it has nothing to do with detox, but it's still perfect. It's, like, perfect for it.
that.
So
Oh yeah, absolutely nothing to do with it, but it makes you laugh. So
So if that's this, you can do that directly. You can, so you're now offering that, Dr. Zach, that the
Mhm,
ability for a pet owner to work with you directly
mhm.
from their living room, which is really cool, to go through a detox process and answer questions and help create a personalized plan for their pet.
Yeah, exactly. So there's two options within that one because I was gonna make two different ones, but basically, um, when you go through the, if you want to do that consult, it would bring you through a questionnaire, and you would be like, which one do I want to do?
Mhm.
But yeah, so essentially, I do think that this is important. The gut side of it is meant for animals that have been on like a kibble based conventional diet for a long time, and especially those that have some type of allergic or immune mediated condition, and those pet parents are looking to move a over to a species appropriate, which can be tricky for sure because a lot of these animals do have so much inflammation that's built up all throughout the body that they do need to kind of have a detox, a gentle detox. And it's sometimes difficult, because the body is going to kind of start releasing a lot of things that it's trying to get rid of, which is a good thing, but at the same time, you know it's necessary. And so that's why we do a consult, because it can be a little scary when we're going through it if this animal, which is 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, has had a lot of inflammation that's built up. And so that's why we do this consult. And there's also two consults within that one as well. Kind of, it's more of like a consult, and then we do have a recheck with that one because it can be something that is a little bit, like I said, scary during the process of it. But then for the vaccine one, it's pretty straightforward, and we just touched on how I would usually do it, but it's usually starting 3 days prior, and then doing 2 weeks of a couple of supplements and some additions to the diet, which have been shown to help with removing toxins and things that can build up, especially when you're getting a vaccine or vaccines.
Sure. That's awesome. That's a really good service. I hope people take advantage of that. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one because I've had, and we've talked about this before, but I've seen some questions in the chat. So, this 2-year-old dog, it's about a 2-year-old dog, and the pet owner says, "What else can I do to help my dog who suffers from itchy, yeasty ears? Have managed to get him off Apoquil, which was prescribed by my vet, and he now has Benadryl daily. He has a probiotic and fish oil every day, home cooked meat based diet, following a recipe. And they regularly clean the ears using apple cider vinegar and boiled water. They're much better than before, but still suffers with itchy, yeasty ears. Is it household dust mite poo that he is reacting to? Me, same as me." So it sounds like they also have an allergy to dust mites.
Yeah. So, and that's kind of the thought process. It looks like there's a lot of things going on that are
Yeah,
good there. I it sounds like the diet seems relatively appropriate. I'd have to look at it for sure and see if there was any
yeah,
modifications. But for what it sounds like, that sounds like it's a good thing to do. Because when we do have yeast overgrowth is something that is almost always either a food allergic response or from a carbohydrate overload kind of thing. So it sounds like that the carbohydrate overload is not what we're dealing with here. So they still, your pet still could potentially be having some type of response or reaction to something. So just have yeasty animals. The things we avoid are like anything sugar based or simple carbohydrate based. Corn syrups. We really try to stay from both white and sweet potatoes if we can, and any kind of grains and peas, legumes kind of stuff can also be antagonistic. So that in the diet, we have to obviously balance it, but those are the things we really try to stay away from with an animal that's been shown to have recurrent yeast infections. In addition to that, there's some herbs that are sometimes helpful with this, so you can add on a rotating basis. Like you're not already adding garlic. We've already had that conversation in the Mythbusters, but garlic is a great thing to add. A golden paste would be a super useful addition that you could do for something like this. And then oregano is actually something you could add to the food, which has been shown to kind of help with controlling yeast.
mm.
Uh,
I didn't know that. That's interesting. It's a new one for me.
which one?
Oregano, you said?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
oregano, cilantro, and oregano are two kind of spices that some dogs don't like, but they do have kind of like a drying, calming effect when they're ingested.
Interesting.
Um, the other thing is with the apple cider vinegar. Sometimes adding some MCT oil or coconut oil has been shown to be antifungal. So that would be potentially something to add at the local aspect of it, and as well as in the diet if you're not already, because the lauric acid inside of MCT or coconut oil does have an antifungal effect. So that would be another thing to maybe add. And then in this situation, if we're already doing a few good things, then I would consider either adding a full spectrum hemp extract or another thing, which is an endocannabinoid like molecule, which I really like, called palmitoyl ethanolamide, which is an anti-inflammatory. So I would add those to the diet since they can help maybe regulate the endocannabinoid system if there's some trouble there. It's probably some additions I would add. There's maybe a few more if I was able to really sit down and look at kind of what we're already doing and what we're not doing. But and then the last thing would be a colostrum supplement. So that's an immune boosting thing, because most times yeast overgrowth is not from carbohydrate overload. It's still from immune system that's not strong enough, because yeast is a normal thing on the body. So that's why the CBD is helpful, since it's an immunomodulator to help bring an immune system up to par or down if it's excitatory. And then colostrum, which I actually just came across a company that I really like, that I offer on the Naked Pet Linktree, called Mount Capra, which is a goat colostrum, and that's important because it's an alpha-2 casein protein in goat
Yep.
colostrum, which is much less stimulatory to the body. That I just actually added to our social, mine personally, as well as the Naked Pet social. So
Interesting.
yeah, those are a few.
I yeah, I love colostrum as well. I think that's such a superfood, I guess we call it. But two
Yeah.
things that stood out to me. One, you touched on this about diet. I mean, we don't know what this dog is eating, but as you said, there could be a protein intolerance. So like, you could be feeding a really balanced quality diet that's sourced well, but if your dog is sensitive to turkey, that could contribute. But also, don't forget about treats and chews that you might be feeding. This is something I'm seeing more of, where a pet parent will be like, I'm feeding this perfect food, but my dog is having XYZ
Mhm.
symptom. And I always say, go talk to your vet. But I'll ask, what treats or chews are you feeding? And it turns out they're eating, grain or artificial dye or sugar
Mhm.
riddled treats, or chews that have been overly processed, like rawhides, for example. And I'm like, whoa, wait! We got to think about everything our dog, or even cat, I guess, is consuming. And so that's something I would really think about. And then I think that they also mentioned taking or giving a probiotic. And isn't it true that giving the wrong probiotic, if it's wrong for what your dog needs, uh, could actually increase yeast production
Yeah, there's a
potentially?
lot, unfortunately, with the probiotic side. Again, buzzword kind of thing. Well, first off, probiotics are not really meant to be given every single day. There's actually one of the leaders in the pet side that created probiotics. I think it's Julianne. Not positive the name, but she had a product that was basically a very concentrated probiotic prebiotic thing, and they were finding over time that dogs are actually getting leaky gut from giving probiotics daily for months to years.
Yeah.
So a probiotic is a medicine. It is not a daily supplement. That's
Right.
important, number one. Prebiotics, which are what good bacteria, something that it can be continued for life because you've inoculated a good bacteria for a couple of weeks, and then you want to feed them more. So that's number one. That's important. Um, Probiotics, though, yes, that's the other thing, is that even within a certain species of probiotic, there are strains that exist, and they're finding out specifically on the human side now, even more and more. And it was funny because I actually watched. There was like a cat holistic conference that was just done recently, and I watched
Mm.
every single one of them. And this was actually touched on, which is interesting because I haven't heard anyone in the pet space say it. But you could have like a species of lactobacillus, for example, that is pro-inflammatory and that is anti-inflammatory. And a lot of the companies that are making, especially over the counter and probably prescription probiotics, they're not understanding this. And so the probiotic side is something that's very interesting. In reality, actually, when I do potentially, when I'm planning on having some type of integrative wellness clinic in the future, probiotics probably won't be used as much. We'd probably rely more on fecal microbiota therapy,
Yeah.
which is fecal transplants, essentially, in these situations where we're still having refractory responses to initial dermatologic conditions and GI conditions. So, not that the probiotic, I don't know what probiotic we're using right now, but probiotics I do know is, again, a buzzword. There's millions of
Mhm.
them there. I would say the 99.99% of companies do not know what they're doing. They're just buying from the same sources the other guy was and putting good
Yeah.
marketing on it. But there are some good ones out there. Just be aware that it's not a daily supplement. It's supposed to be used as a medicine.
Yeah, I'm glad we touched on that. It sounds like we could do a whole nother session on that. And I'm also glad that you mentioned fecal transplants, or I think they call them restorative therapy. But
Mhm.
that's something I've been digging into and really interested in learning even more about, and might even try with Finnegan because he was struggling with some gut issues. He's been
Mhm.
really good, really, really good lately, but that stuff really fascinates me. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. And
Um,
just quickly, someone wrote on the chat
yeah.
what colostrum. So the company I had mentioned was Mount Capra, which is a goat colostrum, but there's a couple others that I have used in the past. I think like something like colostrum LD powder. You may have one that you've used as well. I'm not sure if you have one,
No,
but
I was actually gonna ask you after this because I didn't write down the name
oh,
of it because I don't there's
oh
I've
yeah,
not been able to find one that I feel really good about. So, I'll have to
gotcha.
look into
Well, you get just if you go through that person, if you go through the link on either Naked Pet or my own social platform, then you get it's either 10 or 20% off. But you get a discount. So
Oh,
I don't
awesome.
remember what
Well,
it
there we go.
is.
Nice and easy.
I'm collecting slowly some companies that are really, I believe, trustworthy,
Yeah,
and so we're slowly building that side. Even outside, that's outside of like the Naked Pet website. So
okay.
maybe one day we'll bring that in. We do list a lot of our partners on the Naked Pet website, which obviously you're one of the main ones.
Oh,
But yeah, but
that's awesome.
yeah, we're trying to grow that as well. It's almost like a in addition to the Naked Pet side, we want to also obviously be able to provide trusted sources that I personally talk to every company and I ask them for validity and I ask the ones that have COAs. I'm like, I need to see this first. So, we it's a slow growing process because I'm making sure that there's fact checks first.
Yeah, and you get special, like, exclusive access to some of these companies that consumers, us little peons, can't get access to because you are a doctor, you're a veterinarian, and sometimes I know
That's
that
true.
some
Yeah.
of the special products are
Mhm.
reserved for you. So that's really
Yeah.
cool that you can do that and share that with us. So,
Yeah, for sure.
let's see if we can find a couple more questions here. I wanted to get one. No, not that one. Okay, so okay, I don't wanna go too deep into vaccines again, but I do wanna bring this one up because it was interesting and I did not know this. So the
Mhm.
17-month-old poodle, basically they got their vaccines. 3 days later, this poodle's eyes began bulging out of his head, and he was
Mm.
diagnosed with autoimmune mediated extraocular polymyositis. Um, and he was on prednisone, tapering off. And so this person was just asking, is this something that can potentially be caused by vaccines? And your response kind of surprised me. So, can vaccines cause this potentially?
Yeah, and this is just another immune mediated disease response. So I'm not gonna be able to say I can prove
Correct.
correlation equals causation, but it seems very likely that this is an example of a hyperimmune adverse reaction within a short period of time of getting vaccinated. So I guess I don't know if there was a certain time period that happened. I don't know if anything
Right.
else happened in between, but it would be extremely suspicious, unfortunately, that this was a over hyperimmune simulation response that caused this immediate disease.
Yeah, and after you had told me that, I went and looked it up, and it is like many people and veterinarians actually say that. Of course, there's no proof, so this isn't final, but that there is probable that it is probable. So again, and I didn't want to share that to scare anybody from vaccines. All of my dogs have received their core vaccinations. They get their titer test done. It's just, again, I know it's kind of repeating myself and a bit redundant, but it's just I want to avoid over vaccinating and giving more than they actually need is where I'm at.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess there's no way that you can 100% say this is never going to happen to your pet, even if you're vaccinating
Yeah,
responsibly. But I think that it reduces the chances tremendously, and that it's definitely, it would be the best way possible to reduce this from being something that happens to you.
agreed. I agree. This one is interesting. 2-year-old dog got into another dog's kibble, ended up with pancreatitis, something I'm very familiar with.
Yeah.
This dog is usually on a raw food, currently eating a bland homemade diet,
Hmm.
feeding turkey with rice, pumpkin, probiotics, a little bit of goat milk. She's on day 2 of eating like this. The hospital wanted me to give her Royal Canin or Canin. I don't know how to say that, but the ingredients in that are terrible. So I decided to make my own meal for her. She's doing well, and I was thinking of keeping her on this diet for a couple weeks. Should I keep her on a bland diet longer? I purchased her the rabbit protein from Primal Raw Nuggets. Would this be a good protein for dogs with their condition? What should I do? So this is a long, like I said, this could be a really long thing. But generally speaking, what are your kind of high level thoughts on this?
Yeah. So the bland diet thing is something that's a short-term medicine. So that's what I would say again. So I would say if her gut is showing signs of improving, the stools are showing signs of firming up, she's not vomiting anymore, then most times for me the bland diet is usually a 2 to 5 day thing, depending on how long the vomiting and diarrhea was going on. So if it was a longer period of vomiting diarrhea, like a week or more, then it maybe would be near 5 day mark. But most times my bland diet recommendations are somewhere around 3 days or so. And I think most of the ingredients in there were okay. Were pretty good. The one I would just the rice is something that I really have stayed away from, as when I realized really that rice is not. It was a misconstrued recommendation from like old Chinese medicine, but it's not really useful in this situation. It actually helps probably more support bad bacteria because it's a simple starch. So everything else there looks good. I love the goat milk. That's a great addition in there. So I put that in every bland diet that I recommend as well, or recommend it. Bone broth is also something that can be super helpful. It has protein, fats, collagen. So goat's milk and our bone broth, but everything else will look good in there. I would just say the rice was something I would probably avoid as much as possible. But to answer the question directly, I don't think that diet needs continued really much anymore, as long as we're showing signs of improvement and we're not getting worse. So.
Yeah. And, I recently went through a pancreatic episode. Is that the right term? With my dog Finnegan. And I did which we can talk about this another time, but I did the Nutriscan test, which is basically a test that can help identify if your dog has a sensitivity to certain ingredients in protein. I know there's controversy on these tests, and it's definitely not 100% conclusive. I will say, though, I was feeding him raw rabbit because it's a cooling protein. I thought, okay, this is going to help with his pancreatitis. And it helped, but there were still some symptoms. The new Nutriscan showed me that he was highly reactive to rabbit. So the only change I made was switching in this time period was to switch him to beef because it showed that he wasn't reactive to beef, and we haven't had an issue since. And this has been a
Mhm.
while now. So again, this isn't proof of anything, but I find it really interesting. And for me, it was a really good directional tool. Like, okay, this may not be black and white, 100% conclusive, but here's a report. There's a few ingredients he's potentially
Mhm.
really reactive to. So let's just not feed those and see how he does. So
Mhm.
that's something else to maybe consider.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I
Yeah.
think it has its uses for sure. It has its pros and its cons, and I think that the way you used it makes a lot of sense for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I know we're almost at time, but there were a couple questions, like live questions, that I want to make sure we address.
Yeah, yeah.
People get upset if I don't address the live, the people in the live, which I don't blame them. Um, this mama bear says I'd be interested on the potential of high histamine foods triggering yeast. Going back to the yeast ear infections, I
I actually
discovered
wrote
that.
that down. I wrote that down because I have heard that once in the past, but I never really looked into it. So I'm actually going to look into
Okay,
that because um,
yeah,
that's an interesting thing. I think that again, we don't talk about that till like really next level, kind of like
yeah,
refractory cases, because the majority of animals will respond to some of the most basic of changes that basic that you and I talk about every day, but like some simple and easy solutions. But the histamine thing I've heard of with dogs that have chronic allergic disease, but I never heard it specifically on the yeast side. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. And then there was a question earlier. I remember I just recently went through this with dog dentals, and somebody asked earlier that their vet recommended a dental and recommended the anesthetic dental. So my first question for you, Dr. Zach, is, and you taught me this, so this is why I'm really excited for you to talk about it briefly. Is just, do you recommend anesthetic dentals? And then I'll ask you another dental related question, but I won't overload you. So we'll start with that.
Yeah. Yeah. So gingivitis and then secondary periodontal disease starts in a location that you and I can never reach when an animal's awake. So it starts within the gingival sulcus, which is below the gum line, and then it works its way up. So once you've seen periodontal disease and once you've seen gingivitis, it has already progressed to a point where it needs to be addressed before it starts attacking the tooth itself. So anesthetic dental procedures on either biannual basis with medium to large dogs or an annual basis with small to toy breed dogs is a hard and fast recommendation that I'm going to make time and time again, because there's nothing that you're going to be able to do at home that reaches that site. Now, are there preventative measures? For sure. The one is obviously creating a scraping mechanism that cats are used to it in the wild and in nature that we can at home. So, I know you love the raw meaty bone side, which I would say with the right raw meaty bones, that's an excellent thing to do.
Right.
I've been looking into a couple products possibly that can help with the oral microbiome, which is actually the promoter of the initial biofilm that creates bad bacteria to grow faster than the good bacteria. So that's to be determined. There's a couple of things I came across recently. And then the third thing is same as touching the ears, paws, butt, tail as a puppy, is starting them to get used to brushing. What I would recommend is at least 2 times a week. If you can do every other day, it would be great. Those are the best preventative measures, but there is no replacement for being able to clean under the gum line, which an animal is not going to tolerate if they're not under anesthesia. So there's obviously exceptions when animals have advanced heart disease or they have some type of like a liver condition that's really advanced, that maybe those animals can't get anesthetic dentals. And I understand that that's a catch-22. And so, that's an isolated situation. But when it comes to dental disease, which a lot of people believe is actually probably one of the top 3 main stimuli to then other diseases as well, is oral bacteria overgrowth, which is bad bacteria, then can spread through the rest of the body. We have a lot of evidence to prove that there's some types of Alzheimer's that are developed from people that have bad dental disease as well as have had teeth removed. There's evidence that cardiac disease has promoted it. So honestly, the 2 best things you could ever do for your pet is keeping up on preventative dental health and keeping them at a healthy weight. And the anesthetic dental is the best way to do that, in addition to preventative measures.
Yes. And I recently went through this with my senior, and he tolerated the anesthesia and the procedure great. Did not do well with gabapentin. I don't want to go into a deep dive on that, but from my personal experience, I will not give my animals gabapentin anymore. So take that for what you will watching. And I'll do a post, I think, updating that, because I think that'll be interesting. And then
definitely any animal, any senior animal,
senior.
I see it's a flip of a coin for sure.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't think it really helps too much with pain, and which is what it's used for time and time again, unless it's a neuropathic based pain, which is what a lot of advocates in the human side as well who have seen gabapentin have side effects, unless it's a neuropathic based pain. So like a spinal cord injury or a spinal cord pain or neck pain, bladder pain as well. So some cats that have idiopathic cystitis, I'll put on gabapentin, but really, honestly, it's something that I don't really use much anymore unless it has like a beneficial use. So
yeah. And then RL says, who's the one who asked that question, just says, thank you for answering. Don't like the idea, but I want his teeth taken care of too. And RL, I'm the same. I was like, wait, what? I didn't realize I should be going and getting them dental. They were doing biannual checkups with the vet, but I wasn't doing anesthetic dentals. And so Dr. Zach's like, oh, that's like gold standard. And then I saw Dr. Judy says that everyone says the same. So I feel you, but it was totally fine. The last question, I'm actually curious on your thoughts, Dr. Zach, is MB says
Mhm.
you won't know the answer because there's not enough information, but this is wild. She says the vet is ordering extraction of all baby teeth at 7 months. I'm not sure what to do. Obviously, there's probably more information we need, but like, have you ever heard of anything like that before?
Trying to find it. Um, well, what I would say is that what I think maybe is the thought process is that if the adult teeth have already erupted, which if this is a smaller or
Mm.
tiny breed dog, and they have pushed through and there's a baby tooth next to it still, then that tooth is always going to be there and it's going to promote dental disease faster than anything else because the sulcus can't be reached in between the baby tooth and the adult tooth.
Okay, that makes sense. And she did say persistent baby teeth, which I've heard that term before in I think humans, but where they're not
Uh,
coming. Okay, that kind of makes sense.
yeah, yeah. But the only time I've ever heard of like a full mouth extraction is when a cat unfortunately develops something called gingivostomatitis, which is the most painful autoimmune disease I've ever seen in a lot of cases. So that is something that once it's gotten to the advanced stage of full mouth extraction would be necessary. But um, what I think this is related to is if and it's very common with the canines, like the canine tooth will come in and then they'll have a
Mhm.
little baby one right here. And this one does need to be removed. It doesn't matter what the age is because the
Mhm.
longer it sits there, if the adult tooth has erupted completely, the longer it sits
Right.
there, the quicker it's going to promote periodontal disease. So I would
Mhm.
support that if that's what we're talking about. If that's my best guess, but if it's something else, then I guess I can always um, misinterpret.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I said this in the beginning, disclaimer, everything spoken here and really for all my content, and Dr. Zach's really, unless you're doing an actual consult with him, this content and all related content is not intended to treat, prescribe, diagnose, cure, or prevent, recommend. It's really just sharing experiences, opinions, and thoughts that you can then share with your veterinarians.
Right.
But with that,
Yeah.
if you are watching this and you find this valuable and you appreciate what we're trying to do, which is make vet support, vet care, vet knowledge more accessible, please share this. Please subscribe. Please follow. Please connect with Dr. Zach and the Naked Pet team, all linked down below, because we're really trying to make waves here and really impact a lot of people in a good way and their pets. So we appreciate your support. But with that, Dr. Zach, I think we're at time. So I think that flies by every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. And then if there's a couple more honestly on here
Yeah.
that, we didn't get to or we didn't generally answer, then maybe we can answer them and like make some post or email or something like that. Cause there were a couple other good ones that I would maybe want to comment on that were not covered. So
Okay.
maybe we could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely do that. And what you can do, I'm glad you brought that up, is in the description of this YouTube video will be the Google form that you can submit your Ask a Vet question. And what we do is we go through, we pick, we're not able to get to all of them at this point because there's so many, but we pick ones, there's a lot of multiples. So we try to pick ones that multiple people ask. So continue to submit your questions there and we will do our best. Over time, we may eventually get to all of them. So just make sure you submit your questions and watch these lives. The Ask a Vet we try to do once a month for you guys here. So with that said, thank you, Dr. Zach, for being here, for everything you do for our pets, for being an awesome human.